Hi everyone, Christina here. Welcome to another card video at my YouTube channel and blog. Today I'm going to be creating a card using the Botanic Hello stamp set from Mama Elephant. It has this really pretty large element with flowers and the word hello kind of interspersed inside the flowers. So I'm starting out using my Mini Misty stamping positioning tool, and I have a piece of Fog cardstock from Simon Says Stamp inside the Misty tool, and I'm stamping that really large image stamp using Versamark ink. I'm going to stamp this twice just to make sure I have a really good impression, and I'm going to do some embossing powder on top. Now I'm going to be using some clear embossing powder, and I'm using clear embossing powder on purpose because this is going to be a very kind of muted card, kind of tone-on-tone colors, but then also some metallic shimmer. So I thought it'd be really fun to do some clear embossing powder so that I would have that emboss resist as I add watercolor paints on top. If you've seen some of my videos in the past, you've seen similar techniques where I emboss an image and then watercolor over the top. The fun part about using embossing powder for images like this is that once the embossing powder has been melted, it creates a slick surface on those lines and it repels any watercolor or paint put on top, or even any inks that you want to use. So I'm going to be using these Pearl watercolors from Finetec today, and they look really, really neat on top of this light gray cardstock. Now, I'm not using watercolor paper today, but I figured it would be okay because I'm not going to be going over each area too much. And these paints, when I use them, I like to use them kind of rather thick. They're not really watery. So I think I can get away with using cardstock instead of watercolor paper in this case. Now, if I was going to be using regular watercolor paints, maybe like my Mission Gold watercolors or things like that, I would definitely use watercolor paper and just do a wash, a really light gray wash over the watercolor paper, and then paint over top for a similar look. But since I'm using this Fog cardstock and these Pearl shimmer paints or metallic paints from Finetec, I thought I'd be okay getting away with this. So I mostly just put just straight flat color on all of these, except on the flowers I added some kind of complementary colors over the top. So like on those blue flowers, I added a little bit of purple in the center, and on the red flowers, I added a little bit of purple in the center as well. This flower in the center, didn't like how it was looking, so I went over it with that red paint as well. And these are really opaque paints, so if you have a mistake, you can always paint over the top. So after I had pretty much all of that painted, I brought in some white gouache. This is some permanent white gouache. I just wanted to add some dots or different details around the outside of this image. And at first I was only going to be doing dots. And then the more I started adding dots, I decided, you know what, I really like having small leaf shapes. So I ended up doing dots on the flowers on the centers. And then I also did a few dots on the outer edge. And then I drew on some little leaves kind of going around this area. For the card base today, I'm going to be using some Neenah Solar White 110-pound cardstock. I've scored that at 5.5 to create a side folding card. And then I removed my watercolor piece from my board. I did tape that down so any warping would be minimal. And I trimmed it down just a little bit, just to 5.25 wide by 4 inches tall, so that I would have a little bit of that white card base showing around the edges. So I'm using some tape runner adhesive on the back of my watercolor piece, just using some Tombow Extreme adhesive. I always go around the edges and then just a couple little strips in the center. And then I'll place that down onto my card front and press that down with my fingertips to make sure everything is adhered cleanly. So that's the card for today. Hope you guys enjoyed. This is a really rather simple card, being that I only used one stamp and I just did some simple painting. But those shimmer pearlescent paints really pack a punch when it comes to a simple card design like this. Hope you guys enjoyed. I will be back on Friday for another card video. Until then, thank you so much for watching.